Vicariously, I kind of consider myself having had something of a Swarthmore education. I feel certainly a member of the Swarthmore community, while I would call myself short of an alum, a card-carrying alum. I've been through many of the things that the students have been here, the academic parts.
I learned how much more there is to learning how to teach than I ever thought. One of the great things about teaching is that you're not immediately good at it. Even if you're good at it, you're not immediately good at it. It's a thing that you have to learn. It's a craft, it's an art that you have to learn. And it takes a whole lifetime to actually become a good teacher. And I learned to become a good teacher at Swarthmore because the students are so smart.
The biggest lesson I learned at Swarthmore is that education never ends, and in some real sense, my education began after I started teaching. I have learned an enormous amount from colleagues, and I've learned a lot from students. The trick is to keep yourself open, and that gets harder and harder the older you get, but I learn as much as I teach pretty much every year.
My gratitude is deep for my colleagues, my students, and the alumni who, as they move out into the world and make marvelous contributions in ways that we could not have predicted when they were students, one sees the value of all the work that everyone does here, staff, faculty, students.
Well, of course, I think any professor would say proud of the students who've gone on to fame in the field. While I haven't taught a Nobel Prize winner yet, and there certainly are physics students who've gone on to great careers after Swarthmore, not only in prestigious graduate schools, but one has started a business which is very successful. I also teach pre-medical students, one of whom actually treated me.
I hope whatever paths the students I've taught end up taking, that there'll be a little voice whispering in their ear something or other that they heard, that they discussed or learned about in my classes. I try very hard to teach things that are outward looking, where the implications of what we talk about and what they read for everyday life are apparent. And I hope that actually succeeds, and they find themselves asking what would Schwartz have suggested I do now and again.
I think that people will not be following in our footsteps in the same way. They'll be good professors, they'll be doing many things, but they'll be able to access a completely different kind and range of information than we did. I mean, one of the things that I think is so poignant and important is that we are the last generation of print culture. We lived our whole life in a world surrounded by books, and we lived in a civilization that for the last 400 years has been about print culture since, well, 500 years since the printing press, since print culture was the way that ideas were expressed and passed around and understood and discussed. And that's the world that we lived in. We lived in a world of libraries. It's not the same way at all. Living in the library and wandering the stacks is a very different life than looking things up on the internet.
The job is different than it was in 1982. I mean, 1982, teaching was kind of limited to the classroom with the occasional visit to the office. That's very much changed now. We see students in many, many more circumstances than just the classroom and the offices. So this is recognized by the college's recalibration of the workload.
I really feel as though I've had an opportunity to ride an amazing wave. My job principally has been in music and dance. I've been very committed to trying to bring questions of how the arts can create social change to this campus. I've done that through the Lang Center, through courses I've created and supported in the work of my colleagues. And that, right, all of that has been just, who could ask for more?
You know, people want to go to graduate school to study what I do, and I tell them there is no graduate school where you can study what I do. you have to pay your dues, and that means focusing on things that are much narrower and maybe of less interest to you, and that will get you a ticket that will then enable you to do the things you're really interested in later on.
My husband and I are teachers of a program called Dance for People with Parkinson's, and we are very, very excited to have more time to devote to that.
I probably would have been happy to stay here until they dynamited my office. But my kids and grandkids live on the West Coast. My wife and I have been making 6-hour plane trips every couple of months for 15 years. We're really getting tired of it. So professionally, I don't know what awaits me. Personally, I'm really looking forward to having much more regular, ordinary interactions with the people I'm closest to.
NYU happened to be my graduate school alma mater, and yeah, there are a couple of professors there who actually taught me still. And they were very interested in increasing and enhancing their offerings to undergraduate teaching, and so we clicked into creating a position called Clinical Professor of Physics, which is a full-time position that I'll be taking beginning in September, which involves, exclusively teaching.
I'm going back to Miami. I haven't really lived there in 40 years. My brothers are there. And the sun. I want the sun. I want the ocean. I want to sit by the ocean and do absolutely nothing. Read a book, fall asleep, take a swim every day. I just want to go where it's warm. I get sick every winter up here because it's cold, and I need to go home where it's warm.